In January of 2024, I made a short about how much I love Marvel's Epic Collections, and at the time I had 30. Now, in July of 2024, I have 51. Let's talk about the choices I've made.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and today we're talking about Marvel's Epic Collections. More so, also talking about how do we collect as collectors. This is going to get psychological because I had originally planned today's video to be the Ultraman Taiga Blu-ray or Discotheque July Blu-rays or even a comic book haul, but a combined effort between USPS, Amazon, and FedEx said, nope, none of those are showing up in time, so we're talking about Epic Collections. This is just because Comic-Con was this past weekend and comics are on my mind, and specifically Marvel Comics lately. Just there's a certain Marvel toy line called Marvel Legends that's just killing it right now, so I've just been in a Marvel mood. But let's talk Epic Collections. Like I said in the intro, I had 30 back in January, now I got 51. I would have 53 if it wasn't for FedEx not delivering, but I have a lot more Epic Collections than I did. And so I thought it'd be interesting to talk about like how I pick which Epics to buy, because I certainly don't do all of them, and I certainly don't do all of them even for some characters I collect. But that's kind of how my collection is, like comics-wise, at least on the Marvel side. DC side's a little more varied, but the Marvel side, I'm like very tuned in, is like I collect specific characters or specific teams. Like whatever, like there's some I do completionists on, some I'm a little pickier on. But I thought, let's just talk about the Epics in particular, because it's like a look into the mindset of my comics collection, and I think that's kind of cool, because I think every collection needs rules. Otherwise, it's just a grab bag. And it may take you a while to figure out those rules. Certainly did for me, as we'll talk about a couple of the Epics I do own. But I will say that, like, you know, having rules for collecting definitely keeps things in line. So if you like the type of video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the notification bell if you haven't already. Helps the video get out to more people, helps the channel grow, helps us do more cool videos like this. But let's just go, I guess, alphabetically by Epic Collection title and decide why is it that I bought what I bought. By the way, the fun part about using the backdrop as the subject matter is those books are just going to keep slipping through the whole video, so count how many times that happens and let me know in the comments. Let's start with Avengers West Coast, or the West Coast Avengers. This was a series, this is one of the few times where I picked up an Epic before I even had read the comic. Reason I picked this up is because I was talking to my friend Wheelchair21 about Avengers stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, here's my favorite Avengers, and he's like, isn't that just the West Coast lineup? And I thought, shoot, it is. So I decided, let me start reading West Coast Avengers. So I got, you know, Volume 1, which was How the West Was Won. And if you can imagine, based on the fact that I have Volume 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and now 7, I really like the West Coast Avengers. I really fell in love with the team. I honestly, like, really enjoy their adventures. The storylines, the drama, all the craziness in it. Luckily, all the volumes were pretty reasonably easy to get when I started getting into it, which was super helpful, because that's not always the case, as we'll talk about the next one. But I really do love the West Coast Avengers now. One of my top favorite Marvel teams, which, considering I had like zero interest in Avengers comics for the longest time, is pretty impressive for my personal track record. But yeah, West Coast Avengers, that was one of those I picked up an Epic and then really enjoyed it, and ended up picking up all of them, and now I'm just like, okay, cool, I think the next volume is going to be like the last one, so I'm like, ooh, let's see how this all ends and how it gets ruined by Force Works and stuff. But that's Avengers West Coast. So one of the things that's cool about Epic Collections that also is a downside is the fact that you have the volume numbers in the back as opposed to the spine, which means that you don't have to worry about looking like you're missing a volume. You can kind of build your collection to how you want. The downside is they don't print them in order, so sometimes you pick up all of these and you haven't read any of them yet because you're kind of waiting for some volumes to come out or get reprinted. And that's the case with Fantastic Four. I've loved the Fantastic Four all my life, pretty much. I love the team, I love the characters, and I will absolutely read any Fantastic Four comic. When I was kind of dabbling more into Marvel, I just started picking up random Fantastic Four stories, and I enjoyed every single one of them. So, you know, of course, I'm going all in on Fantastic Four Epics, 100%. I did put another rule on myself. With other characters or other teams, I will mix it up. I'll get some omnibuses, I'll get some complete collections, whatnot. But I really said I'm only doing thick trades for Fantastic Four, and specifically just sticking to Epic collections, because the Fantastic Four are like Marvel's first like team. They're the first family. They've been around forever, so there's just so much history that if I don't just stick to one format, I could just get really lost in trying to buy too much. Now, I do eventually want every Fantastic Four Epic when they make them all, when they reprint them all, hopefully, because I missed some from not collecting 10 years ago. But the Fantastic Four is just one of my favorite teams. It is my favorite team of Marvel, and I'm in for all of it. And so because of that, I definitely want to get more of these, and I definitely am trying to keep up with them as they come out and get them reprinted. I currently have everything I could get. Everything that's I don't own is just out of reach, whether being out of print for too long or just doesn't exist. This volume here, which is 24, gets us all the way up to 1995. I think Fantastic Four Epics are going to go like 27, I think. But there's a big gap that's starting to be filled now. They just announced it. But like the Simonson's era is just starting. There's a huge gap that have existed in other formats but haven't hit Epic yet. But I'm going to get them eventually. I'm all in on Fantastic Four Epics. That's 100% for sure. So I'm a massive Ghost Rider fan, and of course I own all the Ghost Rider Epics. All 2 of them. They do about 1 Ghost Rider Epic a year, pretty much. The first one we got was the Johnny Blaze Years, Volume 1. And the next one we're getting for this is Volume 2 this year. So it's nice they're doing them in order because I've never read these original Ghost Rider Johnny Blaze stories. And then for Danny Ketch, he gets a separate Epic line. Originally I think it was originally Ghost Rider Epic 6, but then they made it Ghost Rider Danny Ketch Epic 1. And they haven't announced the second one of this, but they just announced an omnibus, a first volume omnibus for Danny Ketch. I'm sticking to Epic because I've already rebought this a second time because I bought the previous Ghost Rider Classic trades. But I'm hoping that they'll be doing all of the 90s run in the Epic collection. It'd be nice as well in the omnibus because that stuff there's a huge chunk of it's never been recollected, but I'm always up for Ghost Rider. So next up, Guardians of the Galaxy, my second favorite Marvel team. This, though, is not my second favorite Marvel team because I didn't ever read the original Guardians until they did an Epic collection format, and I really like it. And so I'm looking forward to the second one of these. They're doing these in order as well. I appreciate with some of the smaller titles, like with Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, all that, they're going to do them out of order because they have other formats. Nothing else is coming out for Guardians of the Galaxy besides Epics, so it's nice they're doing them in order, so it's kind of got a nice reading experience if you keep up with it. But this one was the first batch of the original Guardians team from the year 3000, and it's such a hodgepodge of appearances because they didn't have their ongoing title for the longest time, so it's really nice to have. And then in the modern era Epic collections, which is something they started recently to kind of go into the modern era, and there's no like cutoff point that says this is where the modern era starts. It depends on each like character. So, for example, original Guardians, Star-Lord Guardians. When the Star-Lord Guardians come into play, that's now what marks the modern era. So this is the Abnett and Lanning run, the DNA run. And what's cool too is they didn't just reprint just volume or issues 1 through 12 like the previous like complete collections. They actually added the Annihilation Conquest Star-Lord miniseries to the front. And then volume 2 of this will not only just have the back half of the DNA run, but it'll also have the Thanos Imperative included, which is great because I don't have the Thanos Imperative in trade. So really cool stuff they're doing here. We'll see how when they get to the Bendis era, how they'll handle all the side stuff. There's like Rocket and Star-Lord and Drax miniseries that came out in those times. I wonder if they'll all be collected and shuffled together or if it's just going to stick to just Guardians. But really cool. I love the Guardians, and I look forward to more of these. I messed up my alphabetizing a bit, but Daredevil, because I only had one Daredevil epic so far. I love Daredevil. He's really become one of my favorite characters. The Chip Zdarsky run really got my start into reading Daredevil. So the way I'm doing Daredevil is a little different than the others. Like I said, I kind of pick and choose sometimes. This is what I mean. So with Daredevil, I'm only collecting modern Daredevil. I currently own the Mark Waid run. I own the Charles Soule Omnibus. I have ordered the Chip Zdarsky Omnibus. And I'm kind of planning to keep up with some of the more recent runs in Omnibus. Because Daredevil is very creator-specific in the way its omnibuses are done, but also the way that its runs are done. There's very few like little side things besides who's currently writing Daredevil. But during the Marvel Knights era, there was things like Brian Michael Bendis jumping around and not doing every issue, and I really like having every issue. So for Daredevil, I'm doing the modern era epic collections only. I'm not doing the classic era, even though there's a lot of great stuff there. It's just a little too much on top of everything else I collect. So I'm going to stick to modern Daredevil. They started with volume 2, so it starts at the beginning of the Bendis run, but this includes all the other issues not done by Bendis, which is really nice. And they're continuing with 2, 3, 4, etc. Hopefully they'll go back and do 1 to get the Joe Quesada run. But this is basically starting from the Marvel Knights branding is where the modern era starts. But I'm sticking just to modern Daredevil, and anything before Mark Waid I'm going to do in this, and then maybe we'll see when they get to Mark Waid. If they include stuff that's not in the Mark Waid trades that I have, then we'll have to see about maybe upgrading those to Epic. But for now, this is what I'm collecting for Daredevil. Another all-in character, Hawkeye. Now with Hawkeye, both Clint and Kate, I'm very specific as the series needs to be with them as a prominent character. So solo book or a team they lead. But, you know, Hawkeye's been in a lot of Avengers stories. We're not going to try to collect every Hawkeye Avengers story. This first epic for Hawkeye actually includes a lot of his iconic Avengers storylines from the early parts of the eras, which I think was really cool, plus his, like, solo miniseries. And this second one is basically a solo Avengers collection because it contains the full issues of solo Avengers, not just the Hawkeye half of the solo Avengers issues, but the entire things. And we haven't seen what the contents of Volume 3 will be, but that will hopefully have the rest of Solo Avengers. We also are getting Volume 4, which is actually going to take us all the way to 2006, I think, which is kind of crazy, but that's because the Modern Era Epic starts at 2009. And this came out, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but this is all the Hawkeye and Mockingbird miniseries around the time of, like, the Avengers launch, the new Avengers kind of era stuff. And we'll see how this continues, because I think after this is when you get into the Matt Fraction run, which already had a thick trade in the form of the Saga of Hawkeye. So we'll see how they go to collect further things. But cool that Hawkeye has an epic collection line at all, considering, you know, it's Hawkeye. I mean, I like the character, but it's not like he's a huge popular one. So for She-Hulk, they jumped straight in with the Sensational era, starting with Volume 3. We got Volume 4 shortly after, and then they jumped to 6. They jumped over the back half of the Byrne run, which had already been in an omnibus, and so Volume 6 of the She-Hulk Epics gets stuff that's never been collected before. And having read the back half of the Byrne run, I didn't think it was that good. So, I will pick up, of course, Volume 5, but I was like, let me read the issues, because Volume 6, which should be in my grubby hands if it wasn't for FedEx, that is going to be kind of like the end of classic era She-Hulk. It kind of runs all the way up to the 2000s. It'll be interesting to see how they do the modern era, because again, I have the omnibus for the Dan Slott run and Peter David run and such. So we'll see how it turns out. But I'm hoping they go back. I hope they do 5 next, and then they go back and do 1 and 2 for the Savage She-Hulk era, and then kind of finish the classic She-Hulk epics before we get into modern ones. Next up, Silver Surfer, one of my all-time favorite Marvel characters. He has actually had a ton of epics. I own all but one of them. The only one I don't own is Volume 1, which is mostly double dipping from Fantastic Four stories, so it's not like it's a huge deal I don't have it. They just reprinted Volume 3, though, which was the one I was missing that has the start of his 1987 comic run. But this is great because Silver Surfer had this long run in the 90s. Pretty popular comic. It's what spawned his animated series. Plus, a lot of the stuff in this sets up big events like Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War, which is really, really cool. I love my Cosmic Marvel, and Silver Surfer in the 90s just couldn't be beat. So what's really cool is that we're almost done. They've almost got all the volumes out for this Silver Surfer series. This was 7, 8's coming. Here we already have 9 as well, and it's exciting. The thing is, I haven't sat down to read all of it yet because I was waiting for 3 to come out so I could start that era. And then read all the way through, and then now that 8's on the schedule, now I can go, okay, there's 8, and now I can read all the way up through 9. We don't have 10, 11, and 12 yet, but we do have 13 and 14, and 14 is the end of his run, and so I think that any modern era epics would start after that, as opposed to getting a 15, even though this only ends at 2000. I think, the Annihilation stuff is tricky, but after that stuff I think would be considered modern era epic. But it's so cool that Silver Surfer's got 14 epics, and we're only missing 2, 10, 11, and 12 that haven't been put. So there's only 4 they haven't made. And so hopefully they'll reprint Volume 1 when they get close to the end of that, because I love my Silver Surfer. Okay, so here's another one I'm picky with, which sounds weird considering I'm holding that many books. This is X-Men. I didn't do X-Men epics for a while, but I finally jumped in. Thanks to X-Men 97, like sparking my fire again. I love the X-Men. Third favorite Marvel team, though. You know, so after Fantastic Four and after Guardians, it comes X-Men. I love the X-Men, but I'm a little pickier with X-Men. I'll read any X-Men, but owning it, that's a different story. So I start with Second Genesis, which is Volume 5. This is the beginning of, it starts with Giant Size X-Men, and then it goes into the Chris Claremont run. This is like the kind of stuff I like. So I have 6, which is Proteus. Of course, I've got 7, Fate of the Phoenix. That's your big Phoenix stuff. Number 8, I, Magneto. Number 9, the Brood Saga. And then we jump to 12, which is the Gift. And then 17, which is Dissolution and Rebirth. And then I jump to 22, and you're like, wait a second. That's not Claremont run. Yeah. Scott Lobdell, not one of my favorite writers before, because most of the Scott Lobdell stuff I had read was actually DC. His Teen Titans and the New 52, for example, did not enjoy that at all, and his Superman. But his X-Men was pretty solid, and one of the other epic lines we'll talk about in a moment reminded me of that. But this is Legacies, so this is like the big Legacy virus storyline and stuff. And then I have 23, which is Fatal Attractions. Big kind of infamous story in a lot of ways. And this one also includes like the Gambit miniseries and stuff, so pretty cool. Now when it comes to X-Men, I'm stopping at some point. I'm not sure if I'm going to go through Onslaught, or if I'm just going to stop before Onslaught. I'm not doing new X-Men because even though I enjoy reading Grant Morrison's and Frank Quitely's new X-Men run, I don't really want to own it in print. I'm like, I don't love it that much. And Astonishing X-Men is another one where I didn't get Volume 1 because it's the exact same as the complete collection, which I already have, like the same exact contents. And I'm like, that's a lot of money for the same exact contents. And now Volume 2 is coming out, and I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't match my other one, so I'm not sure what I'm doing with that. I would like to see epics for some of the more recent stuff, because 2000's X-Men is a little rough. But in the terms of the Claremont run and the Lobdell run, I'm in for those. I'm in from like Volume 5 all the way to, I don't know, 25. Do like my X-Men. I will also say, I don't know if I'm going to go back and get those first 4, because I don't like the Stan Lee Jack Kirby run, not because Jack Kirby, because of Stan Lee's writing, and I have not read the gap in between that and Giant Size. So jury's out on if I'm going to get the first 4, but for now I'm focusing on Second Genesis through whenever Onslaught happens. So X-Men is not just X-Men. There's a lot of spin-off titles for the X-Books. I'm not doing Excalibur, New Mutants, X-Force, X-Factor. I'm not doing any of those. It's just too much. If I want to read them, I got Marvel Unlimited. I'm sticking to core X-Men for the most part. I am constantly flip-flopping on whether or not I'm buying Wolverine epics. We shall see. But Generation X was something I wanted to read because it's different, and I love the characters of Chamber and Monet and Jubilee, so I was like, you know what? I want to read Generation X. I've been hearing good things about it. My comic shop thankfully had Volume 1, which is this one. Volume 1's kind of out of print and harder to get. And so they had Volume 1, I picked it up, and I was like, I need to find out, am I going to enjoy Generation X? It's Scott Lobdell writing, which like I had said before, I didn't like Scott Lobdell's DC stuff. Sometimes writers and characters just don't mix, and I think that was that case with Lobdell at DC, because I love Generation X. This first volume in particular is just fantastic. I love the character dynamics, I love the storylines, I dig it so much. So I, of course, made sure to pick up Volume 2 and Volume 3 while they were still available. Volume 4 comes out in September, so I'm like, okay, you know, I'm ready. We haven't gotten an announcement of Volume 5. I think it's either going to be 5 or 6, depending on how big the page counts get. But I really like Generation X. This is, I think, it's become my like new favorite X-Men spinoff book at this point, because I really enjoyed these characters so much in Volume 1. And yeah, I haven't read Volume 2 and 3 yet. I've been a little backlogged making videos and stuff, but I'm going to read them before September. So when I get Volume 4, I'm like, yeah, let's go. But yeah, Generation X, it's the one X spinoff that I'm definitely getting. But I keep thinking about Wolverine. Like, am I going to do it? Is it going to happen? I don't know. Is it too much? Do I just pick up what's available and call it a day? I don't know. I love Wolverine, but like, how much Wolverine is too much Wolverine? All right, let's talk about some stray epics. Avengers Under Siege. So before I was really into Epic Collection collecting, and I kind of knew what I wanted, I sort of would pick up Epics when they were on sale, if they weren't like, characters like, Silver Surfer and stuff. So Under Siege, I found at my comic shop for half off in the used section, in a very, very nice copy of it. And I was like, okay, half off Epic Collection, can't turn up that deal. I haven't actually read it yet, I'm going to be totally honest. It's the 1986-87 Epic. It's got the West Coast Avengers crossover in it, which I read the issues of that. And I like this team lineup because it's got Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel on here and stuff. So I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool. I need to read this. What I'm hoping it doesn't happen is I go down a spiral where I'm like, I need more Avengers epics, and I start like collecting like all the 80s or something. Thor is a character I haven't read like a ton of Thor, but I try to read more Thor because I like Thor. I like mythology stuff. I got to tell you, I'm more of a Hercules guy. But Thor, War of the Gods, I found it at Target with a $10 price tag on it. And I think it was an online return. And I was like, an epic for $10, can't turn that down. Also haven't read it. This is 75 to 77. Len Wein is on it, which I was also like, yeah, and then also Hercules is here. So, I will read this at some point. I don't know if it'll put me in a spiral for more Thor, but these are the two epics that I kind of just picked up on a whim because of the price point, and I haven't continued their lines yet, but, that's just how it goes. And then there's the weird one, the Planet of the Apes Adventures Epic Collection, because most epics are about, yay thick, and this one is tiny. Because this series was only 11 issues, so it's just what they do. This also had an omnibus, but I'm really glad I got the Epic. The Epic is like one of the cheaper ones. I think it's the shortest one page count-wise. It's got a bit of a different spine. It's got this brown spine compared to the classic Marvel black, because under Planet of the Apes, it's also a Fox property as opposed to a Marvel property. But this is probably one of the coolest Epics I've ever owned, because the comics inside are a retelling of the first two Planet of the Apes movies, but the artwork is incredible. Like, there is so many, like, different visual changes to get a point across the points even harder than the movies did. And so someone that's watched the movies and enjoyed the movies, reading this I thought would be boring because it's just an adaptation, but some of the visuals are even more gruesome than they were in the movies, which is honestly pretty impressive considering this was Comics Code Authority times. Now, it is labeled Volume 1. Doesn't mean there's a Volume 2. I'd love a Volume 2 that collected the black and white Planet of the Apes magazine comic stories. And, I don't know if they have the rights to the other publishers' Planet of the Apes books, because that's kind of how licenses usually go. But if they do, we could see a whole line of Planet of the Apes epics the way they do Star Wars, and I think that'd be really great. But I will always buy more Planet of the Apes if I can. So that's the Epic Collections. That's my rules and guidelines and stuff for how I collect them. We'll see how it changes. Maybe I'll just be like, nah, I'm doing classic Daredevil. I am doing Wolverine. I think Wolverine's more likely at this point. But probably when I've read all of my backlog. Because some of these I did pick up on sales, like the X-Men ones. I was getting them like buy two, get one at Target and stuff. So I have some more reading to do. I told myself, don't start another Epic line until you finish reading. Though there are some new ones coming out, like Blade, that I'm like, oh, well, does that count? Or are we talking about I don't add more to the backlog? But anyways, I love Epic Collections. I love to see that Marvel's doing more with them. I'm glad there's more modern stuff. They're doing like Ultimate Spider-Man, like the original in Epic. So I'm excited to see what Marvel does with the Epic Collection. I really do love this format, just having these nice thick paperbacks. It's not as overwhelming as reading an omnibus, but it's not like it's a thin trade. Like, you're getting a substantial chunk of the story, and that's what I like about them. So on that note, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button, hit subscribe and notification bell if you haven't already for future videos on the channel. Leave any comments down below. Tell me how many Epic Collections you have, or if you even have any, because I think a lot of Marvel comic collectors at this point, you got at least one Epic Collection, unless you're just omnibus only, which is rad, because that's impressive. And so keep me tabs on the comments down below. I'd love to know more. Also, be sure to check out our live streams on this YouTube channel every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Our Discord server in the link below. You can come join, hang out, and talk. If you want us to help support the channel directly, you can join as a channel member for perks like early access to videos, member-exclusive live streams, and special shout-outs. Let's give some special shout-outs right now. Special shout-out to our channel members, including our Captain Tiers, Spin-54, Super Shaddix Boom, Tom McKay, Master Ben 95, Swapsito 14, Mohammed Faiz Daniel, SSJ4 Jason, Scrublord Gaming, and Psycho O's. And thank you to everybody who helps support the channel through the channel memberships, as well as watching the videos. You can also find me across most social media platforms at Soundout12. You can find my awesome graphic designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643. And you can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for comic news, reviews, and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.